they're very traditionalist in their approach of what careers should be. So predictably, people know what a lawyer does, an accountant does. But when you start branching into these like new age, humanity, like other subjects which aren't the traditional subjects, like for example, if someone says, I do marketing, well, what does that mean? What does that entail? And so in their mind, it's like an all or nothing between stability and working in the council HR department. And if you say you're doing, I don't know, like coaching online, firstly, they don't even know probably the online platforms that you're using. And two, they don't know what the money model would be. They probably assume, oh, is that like a passion project? And is that where, like, I don't know, people DOS online but don't make actually any money? Whereas you realize, which we know, you can make far in excess of what a lawyer makes, an accountant makes, just in a different business model.
Hi, welcome to Unapologetically You with myself, Tulsi, and Kelly. We are so pleased to welcome back Pixie, Nitesh Patel, who actually had been in another country when we recorded this podcast. It was in between lockdown number 2 and 3 in the UK. So this is pre-recorded, and just to let you know that this was done before lockdown number 3 in the UK. And Pixie talks about his experience as a digital nomad and what aspects of online working had given him the experience to travel during the pandemic, as staying in a different country. So I hope you really enjoy this podcast. Remember, please do subscribe and be a part of our Patreon membership, where all of our podcasts are released prior to the public, so you get a first glance. And also we're putting in competitions and networking events in the coming months. So I hope you enjoy this podcast, and pleased to see you if you can join our Patreon community. And I hope you enjoy this podcast.
Welcome to Unapologetically You with Kelly and Tols and our guest Pixie.
Hi Pix, we are so glad that you are back on our podcast for season 2 and our first series. Oh my goodness, it feels like it's such a long time ago, but we were talking about law, politics, career development within web design. And now thank you so much for taking time out to come back on for a special feature. And we're going to talk about business and lifestyle and the life of a digital nomad. If for those people who don't know what that is, stay tuned, because we are going to grill him today. So Pixie, hi, how are you? Welcome back.
Very well, thank you. I don't know what a digital nomad is. And I probably hate that word more than anything else, but yeah, we can maybe go into it later.
Okay.
About what this world is.
Well, tell us, what do you interpret it to be? What would you label it as? For someone who's interested in understanding.
I think it has too many connotations and too many kind of traps in there. So, like, in my mind, before I did this digital nomad world, I think there's too much of a spectrum between the hipster who wants to travel the world and make a little bit of money on the side, and they may be 6 months into their career. And then you can have someone 10, 20 years into their career who's got a business with, I don't know, 10 employees, but just manages those employees online. Like, there's a complete spectrum of maybe skill set, whether they're entrepreneurs or freelancers. Like, I think that's the big distinguishing line between a digital nomad, is that I would say probably 80% of digital nomads are freelancers, where they're going job to job, chasing jobs. And then you've got the 20%, which are like the entrepreneurial element of where they own the business and then they're expanding, they're employing people. But it's a wide spectrum. And the digital nomad seems to be more, like, it seems to entail more of a traveler perspective to things as well, because me saying I'm a digital nomad from London or from Cardiff or from the UK, that just doesn't seem to fit like the mind's description. Yeah. Whereas if I say I'm a digital nomad working in Bali, well, that seems to go hand in hand with each other, with the stereotypes. And I think there's definitely a big travel aspect. and a mindset to a digital nomad. I think it's kind of like that fusion between a potential career, stability in some senses, but the traveler aspect of life of kind of wanting to explore the world a little bit.
I love that you mentioned stability, because certain people's version of stability could mean, you know, living in the place that they were born, having family and friends around them, a steady 9-to-5 job, but you can still have stability and still travel and explore and work in different locations, right? It's just a different version of what you find is stable.
Yeah, I think when often people talk about stability, they talk about it from their own perspective rather than just like a basic definition. Like
Yeah.
the most basic definition of stability could just be, can you pay your bills? Have you got a roof over your head? And are you able to survive? That for me is ultimate stability. Like everything after that point is just truly a bonus. But I think when most people talk about stability, I think they do it from the lens, well, by this certain age, you should be married. By this certain age, you should be doing this. You should be doing this. Like, I think they talk about it from more of a cultural aspect and a perspective, rather than stability in the most like base level of, have you met your foundational needs? I think they mean it from a cultural perspective. And sometimes it could be, and I'm not saying this if it is this, but sometimes there's that kind of element of either fear of the unknown, it could be jealousy, it could be any number of factors, or sometimes concern, well, you know, he or she is traveling the world. Are they like trying to escape things in life? Are they, it's very hard for people to understand unless they've done it themselves. So if I say I want to travel the world and work remotely online, if they've never done that, it's so hard for them to relate to what that means, why I'm doing it more so than anything else. And I think then the safest option is for them to say, well, are you sure? Like, why didn't you settle down? And why didn't you, you know, build a career in London or the UK? And I think, and I can't blame them from that. And then there are some people who are like, well, do it and like travel the world, and why not? And I think stability, I think we all need stability, but it depends on what we mean and how we define stability.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And at some stage along the line, you've had all those things. You had the career, you had the big career in London, and you had stability, and you decided to pursue something not necessarily better, but further, deeper. So you find yourself now in Lisbon. Can we say that where you are?
Yes, I'm in Lisbon. So it's I've been here now, I think 6 weeks, I think approximately. It feels longer in some ways as well. And yeah, it's all very kind of accidental of how I was here anyway. Dulcie knows.
Is that right?
Where,
so you didn't plan this? This came.
No, and everything, like I think with everyone, like it seems like everyone's life turned upside down, like throughout this whole year in one way or another. And in my one, they're all completely first world problems of where in March, I had planned to go to Canada for 6 months. And that was with a view to potentially like moving long term there. Well, as soon as March came, lockdown, the world was just shut at that point. So Canada was out the question completely. Then I thought about the possibility of like Thailand and Bali. That seemed like a digital nomad spot, maybe work in the sun. I thought the options are good. Both of those options were out the window at that point. Bali closed their borders, Thailand closed their borders. So then I thought to myself, so there's a website called Nomad List, where it's got all of the places in the world of where they rate them, like hundreds of places, cities in the world, where they rate them for like digital nomad lifestyle. So it could be cost of living, community. It's just a whole like host of countries in there and cities. And so one of the cities I was looking at was Belgrade in Serbia, which is an unusual place. Most people don't even know where Belgrade is anyway. But it was quite high on the list. I think it was like number 4 or 5. And I thought, well, that seems like a different place to go. Why not go there for a couple of weeks? And then towards the end of this year, during this period, 2021, hopefully life returns back to normal and I can go to Canada and kind of continue with it. Anyway, long story short, the England lockdown then happened a couple of weeks ago, where they grounded all the planes to Serbia. So at that point, I had my Airbnb accommodation booked. I had like itinerary kind of planned. I'd done a Google map of where I wanted to go, where the co-working spaces were, where the restaurants were. All of a sudden, within like a week, that those plans were out the window. I only had two choices at that point. I either sit it out for the rest of the year in the UK and just wait until 2021, which is quite a few friends just told me that. They said, look, it's maybe not safe right now. Why didn't you just wait until 2021 and then go? But for me, in my mind, it wasn't an option because I'd already waited so long to travel. I already had it in my mind. And then so I chose Lisbon, and Lisbon is #1 in the world for digital nomads, which it's an unusual thing for people to kind of realize, and I realize it here now, especially why, but it's ahead of Bali now for digital workers. So I think some of it is just traditionally, it's just happened over a period of time of where, so they call it like Lisbon is like the San Francisco of Europe, but somehow it's kind of got that reputation of hot climate most of the year. Even now during these months, you'll get some days which are sunny and some days where they rain, but the temperature never dips below, let's say, I don't know, 10 degrees pick or something. It's like it's relatively always pretty warm throughout the year here. And so I think the climate definitely helps. Cost of living isn't overboard expensive. Like it's probably more expensive than a lot of other places in Europe, like Eastern Europe, but it's relative to the places like London and Madrid and Barcelona. It's not overboard expensive here. And I think, but what's happened, and I think this is why it's become the digital nomad spot in the world, is there's a huge community here. Like, and it's really hard to describe. And the best way for me to describe it now, so on the first time I came here a couple of weeks ago, I did like the meetup groups. I joined the meetup group, and I've always heard about the meetup app and meetup groups, but I've never done it. So I went on the meetup app, and they've got like digital nomad events going on in the week. Now, even during COVID, right now there's about 2 to 3 events, face-to-face events per week here in Lisbon. Now, those events still have 50 to 100 people in there during COVID. And so I spoke to one of the organizers yesterday with my cousin, and she said during the peak seasons outside of COVID, they had a digital nomad event every single day with at least 120 people per day, just off their organization. So just off that one group. There's going to be other digital nomad groups, or just expat groups. It could be any, like cinema club, it could be anything. And I think that's what's happened here, is that people have realized in the world there's a huge sense of community here, that you can really build up a whole life around like other expats, people living here, semi-short term to long term. And I think that's why it's ended up being like the digital or the nomad hotspot in the world.
Sounds like Lisbon's the place to be, Tulse.
Yeah. And what was it like traveling? Because you'd also gone somewhere else before you decided to set your sights on Lisbon. What was the travel like during COVID? Because a lot of people are still worried about the traveling aspect of
it. So 2 months ago, I went with my cousin to the Algarve into Portimao, so also Portugal, and that was just a Airbnb trip. We went there for 10 days just to be able to relax by the beach. We had an apartment like a minute to walk on the beach. It was just, we just wanted to get out of the UK, and especially because that was maybe towards the end of August. So we'd had a full lockdown in the summer, and we just thought if we don't get, and especially because all of the news was, well, when the winter comes, it's going to be even more, and it's gonna like be even like further lockdown. So we thought, well, if we don't seize the opportunity now and get out the country, we may not get that opportunity again. And so yeah, we went to Portimao, and what was really surprising to me, and this is what I've kind of told friends and family now, is that this is one of the safest times to travel ever. 2 primary reasons. One, the airports are quiet. Like 2 months ago, we went from Stansted. There was hardly anyone there in the actual airport itself. Yeah. From getting through the gates or through the doors to the security desk, it was like a 10 minutes from beginning to the end. It was such a quick process. Because
Oh my
you're not
God.
dealing with humans now. A lot of them, to check in your bags, you just go on like the electronic weighing scales, you get your ticket and you're through the security desk. It's so seamless. And then when you get onto the plane, 2 months ago, we were with Ryanair. Me and my cousin, and this is unheard of, but me and my cousin each had a row of three by ourselves. So she had one row of three, I had another row of three. Now, you're never going to get that. Now, I can't get much more safer than that, of where you don't have to really, like, there are people around, but you wear masks on the plane, on the flight. And so I thought, well, that's safe as you're going to get it. Like, it's no more dangerous or unsafe than going to the supermarket
Yeah.
and probably consuming the air of someone in the vegetable aisle. It's the same process. And so, yeah, I thought the travel aspect was relatively easy. And that's why, like, I found that okay. And I wouldn't say that encouraged me to do it then 2 months later. I'd already had it in my mind that I want to go away for a couple of weeks. But I think it definitely reassured me
Yeah.
that beginning process, at least. But when we got to Portimao, which is very different to the UK, and I don't know how Australia is, but here they respect the rules very well. Like, there's just, they wear masks indoors. The supermarkets insist on you wearing a mask, and a specific types of mask where you can't wear those like bandana types. You've got to wear like a proper mask. And so you feel even more better because you think, well, people are respecting the rules here. Whereas in the UK, it's just absolute chaos where people just kind of like, there's a very anti-authoritarian kind of like anarchist streak of where people just don't want to follow the rules.
Yeah.
And so I feel completely safe here. Completely safe.
Well, we don't have to wear masks anymore. We still have our social distancing, and we're not allowed to travel internationally. So internationals are allowed to come into Australia, but under very specific rules. And there's also that 2-week isolation period. But there's always that one person, isn't there? So overall, I think Australians were quite compliant when the rules were tough. They're not really anymore. Nothing. It's like we're allowed to have 30 people in the house now, and weddings are going ahead and things like that. But there's always that one person that wouldn't wear a mask when we had to, right? So, and it really, sometimes it only takes one to cause that anarchy.
Sure. But it's nice to know that it's really safe out there because, like you said, it's those things that people are worried about, but because they're going through an unknown period, they don't know anybody who's traveled or experienced this. And actually, this is why I felt like it's really important to have you on here, because when I said I wanted to travel, people are like, oh no, just wait till next year. Same thing. But it's almost like, well, I know somebody who's given me this experience on their behalf and allowed me to see, actually, it's not that bad. You just need to have open borders, obviously. And I would say one of my boundaries would be, I don't want to quarantine in one hotel room for 2 weeks, So it's like, where are your boundaries? And then what are you willing to compromise to get to where you want to go? And, what do you want to do? Because the options are there. They are there.
Maybe not as a tourist so much.
No.
But if you go and live as a citizen, then yes. But a lot of tourism has closed down, shut down, slowed down, just because there's no tourists. Really. But yeah, go Tolls, go. If you can go.
Should I just go to Lisbon?
Well, we got like 2 weeks, until like the end of the year. So this is the season, the moment time now.
True. Quick.
I think there's an element of like, also when people have said like wait until next year and stuff. We don't. Okay, now the vaccines are rolling out, but it's not as if there's a predictable state of where, I think Dulcie and I have spoken about this, of where if someone said the world is going to go back to normal by September 2021, yes, that's a long way away, but at least there's a predictability there. People can plan their life. But when someone says travel next year, well, the restrictions could be in place until 2022. Who knows? Like, none of us know.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, you just keep endlessly saying, I'll wait. I find traveling now is the same as taking any risk in life, in the sense that someone's saying, well, don't go for this job now, like be stable and then go for it in 6 months. Like, it's about what pressure points and what risk you're willing to take. And And Kelly, you're absolutely right. I think like if you're like a tourist, then yeah, probably a lot like Gran Canarias and places like that, that's probably open. But it's probably not as condoned or as acceptable. But if you're going like semi-work purposes, then there are places, and especially if you're willing to do the quarantine and then settle into a city for a couple of weeks, but then you're living like a local.
Yeah,
No different than living in our own countries.
for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. So Pix, I wanted to ask about your particular reason for traveling. Like, what triggered you to then think, I want to go venture to different countries? Everybody has their own reasons, and most people like attribute, you know, traveling as one of their hobbies, but actually it's just going on holiday. But traveling and you know, going on holiday, for me, they're two different definitions. So what made you think that actually I'm at a time of my life where I can explore and work abroad?
I think if there was like a title of a story, it'd be a very like, or like if there was a title of a movie right now in my head, it would be titled People. And what I mean by that, so a lot of what's happening right now in my life is probably accidental in the sense that just good fortune of what I was exposed to. So a quick summary: 36 years old, from the age of 18 to 35. Like most people, male or female, I just went on holidays with friends. So it was like the Greek islands. I think we went like 4 or 5 times, of where you'd be having the fish bowls every night, and they just groups of 30 guys, and we're just kind of having a good time. Then I did the whole like Cancun, and we did New York, but just very like quick drinking type kind of holidays. I had never done the whole exploring thing, because it was just like, well, my friends just want to drink. I'm happy with drinking. I'm happy to go to these, to kind of like these fun islands and have a good time. But it was never about like the culture. It was just more about being with your friends, having a good time at the end of the summer or at the beginning of the summer after high school, or after university, and just enjoying yourself. My cousin, by contrast, Hero, who's here with me, she came here on a Monday. She from I think mid-20s, she went traveling with one of her friends, Mel, and they did like a 6 months, like South America, I think Southeast Asia, like so many different places, and the traditional like backpacking hostels, that whole world. And as soon as she came back, she kind of continued with it. She did her own solo trip. I think it was to Brazil for the first time, and then she continued and did like hostels in Barcelona, across Europe, Lisbon. She'd been telling me for years and years, like, Pixie, give it a try. Like, stay in a hostel, see what you think of it. And my whole perception of hostels was disgusting, horrible. It's what poor people do. It like, why is it even like a choice and an option? Because and it's only either my own ignorance and closed-mindedness, but I think it was just because I was used to a world in which we had stayed in hotels or apartments, that I didn't know what the hostel world even meant. So last year, at the beginning of the year, in January, I just kind of caved in. I just said, yes, let's do it. Like she said, let's go to Krakow. There's a really nice hostel called Mosquito Hostel there, small little hostel. And what convinced me, which I didn't even know was an option in hostels, was private rooms. I thought it was hostels and you had to bunk bed with people. Well, no, it turns out, yeah. So most hostels have got private rooms, and some of these private rooms they've got en suites. Some of them have got like, in the one in Krakow, it had its own little mini settee inside of my room. So some of them are even nicer than hotels I've been in. And so yeah, January 2019, right at the beginning of the year, I think in the second week of January, we went to Krakow. As soon as I went to Krakow, as soon as I got through the hostel doors, went into the like checked in, went into the lounge area, I would genuinely say changed my life forever. Like completely changed I wouldn't say like fundamentals of my outlook in life, but it definitely made me like understand that there's a completely different aspect to life, of where, and the summary and why I said the word people is that I remember that day, maybe in the afternoon and in the evening, people were doing like the drinking games around the table. There was about 20 of us around this table. There was an Argentinian, there was a Spanish person, there was an Italian person, there was an American person, there was a Canadian person. It was just like the United Nations of people inside of this hostel. Firstly, you're never going to get that. None of us are going to get that in our daily lives, in our own city, in being exposed to so many different people from so many different places in the world and cultures. But more so, it was, and maybe it helps people drinking, but I think it's the traveler spirit. People were so honest. People were like revealing that, like the insecurities in their life, the sense of adventure they've got, their excitement and happiness. And for me, I thought this feels like however remote and distant it is from reality, it feels real. Like it feels like these people are real. Feels like I'm being exposed to something like truly real in life. And it feels like I'm kind of living. And after that, I kind of decided last year that I was going to do my first solo trip at the age of 36. And so then I did like 7 trips last year then after Krakow. And they were all across Europe, so they weren't further than Europe, but there were 7 hostel trips. And then I just got hooked to the whole hostel kind of culture but it's for me, it's the meeting the people. I'm not really much of a I don't know, like landscape sightseeing type person. Like I appreciate it. Even when I went to Rome, we did the whole Colosseum and kind of like Vatican City, etc. But the things I'm going to take out of it are going to be those 1 or 2 individual people who I met, of where you can kind of connect to them, and that for me is what fuels me. Like right now, it's getting the balance between my career, allowing me to meet new people and just have new experiences.
Yeah. Would you say the people that you've met have been social connections, or is it the needle moved a little bit more toward being a networking connection, like, as you know, working connection, or a bit of both?
I would say in my case, it's 100% social.
Yep. Okay. So your work, whatever your work is, goes with you to your destination. You don't go to your destination and get work. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's where the distinguishing line between the freelancer and entrepreneur is, of where, it's also, I don't want to mix the lives, that I see the social aspect as the social aspect, and then my career, my work, it's a completely different realm. And at that point, I kind of don't want any distractions. I don't want other people around me. So, and that's a very hard one. We can maybe go on that later, but there are some trappings of this whole world as well, of this like digital nomad world, of where you can fall into some really bad habits, and of where, going back to the word stability, where you don't have the stability you would have in your own home city. But then there's the aspect of the social aspect of meeting new people, new opportunities, and having a fresh outlook and perspective on life. So there's good and bads to this life. It's what you take out of it.
I find it.
Sorry, go,
No,
Charles.
no, carry on.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about the time zones. Would one of the bads be, if your work goes with you, that you have to still work in the time zone you came from, although you have just said to me that the time zone you're in is the same as home anyway? But if it was a different time zone, if it was Australia, would you have to work all night, for example? Or would you still, yeah, okay. So that's a disadvantage.
An additional problem, yeah. I think that would be, I think if it was a different time zone, I think it would be even more of a problem.
It would be for me, yeah.
It depends on person to person. I think one of the aspects of where it's probably more of a problem for me is that if people move to a city, they often, they'll go into like an Airbnb apartment. Well, then it's more similar to their home environment, of where they've got the space, they've got maybe the desk, etc. I've chosen deliberately to do long stay in a hostel, in a private room hostel, because what happened during COVID, especially now, is that a lot of these hostels are struggling because they haven't got full capacity. So they're offering a lot of incentives for long stay people who are willing to stay a minimum of 1 month, and they're giving them basically discount prices. Where you wouldn't be able to otherwise get it. And so an easy context, my room that I got here now, I think it's about €550 per month. During the peak season, the room is £2,200 a month.
Wow.
It's £70 per night. So, and because they, and you know, when they're busy, when they can't give me long term even. So I asked them, I said, can I take 6 months next year? They said, unfortunately, we're probably going to be booked every day because we know they normally are.
Yeah.
So they know those rooms are going for 2,200 a month, which is more expensive than a hotel, more expensive than an apartment. And I think with the hostel world, you get the whole trappings then of constant potential for distraction, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you've got maybe a bar downstairs in your hostel. But more than anything else, it's just you could be in the lounge area and a new person comes in. You ask the simplistic question, hey, how are you? Where are you from? That opens up a whole different conversation. And then maybe 6 hours you've been talking to them and you've got no work done. And so it's, and then if you add alcohol on top of that.
And then a hangover the next day.
Then a hangover the next day, there are some unique problems that can come from this. But not obstacles that can't be overcome with planning, discipline, and sometimes it's just time. Like I've been here for 6 weeks. I'm going back to the UK next week for a couple of weeks and then planning to come back next year, like in February. By that time, I'll know exactly how to plan it out. I know where I need to improve in the areas. And so it's nothing that can't be overcome with just careful planning.
Yeah. I just going back to your term of why you're traveling, of people, people being the main objective to your travel plans, but it's kind of like taking out the perspective of a lot of people don't get to meet new people every day, right? Unless you start a new job or you move to a new neighborhood. As you get older, it's really, really hard to build those connections with new people. But I feel like sometimes people don't like doing that because they don't like small talk. For me, I don't like small talk. But what you've then just said about, being in a hostile environment, it's giving you more in-depth conversations. It's almost like sometimes, you can be more honest with a stranger than you can to your own family, and then you just unload. And it's actually really interesting that you said that you don't just start with, what do you do? That's normally the common question, right? Of, who are you? What do you do? And that's not who we are about. Our job doesn't define us. It's who are we as people? And creating this community where you've got so many different cultures and characters that you can actually go a little bit deeper and peel back the onion layers. But what are the difficulties besides you can get drunk and then not do any work and be disciplined with your hours? What are the other challenges? Like, for example, what would you pack and how difficult would it be to be somebody who has a lot of stuff going from hostel to hostel?
Are you speaking from personal experience, Charles?
No, I pack less than he does.
You pack lightly? Okay, so we're talking about Pixie. All right, Pixie, how do you do it?
I think I'm the worst traveler in the sense of I've spoken to a few people here, which I knew this was the case, but where they talk about their packing like itinerary and things like that, how much kilograms they carry with them. Well, most of them have got just hand luggage maybe, or just like a carry-on where they carried a couple of pairs of clothes, maybe one pair of shoes. You flip to me, this trip I've carried 45 kilograms with me. I've carried one full suitcase, one carry-on bag, and another carry-on bag. So I've got three luggages, and that's just normal for me. For me, I'm an older traveler.
The beard stuff, right?
Yeah, it's the beard stuff alone is the 20 kilograms. Yeah, absolutely. It's and for me, that's. Thing is, I suppose that wouldn't be practical if I was doing like a younger traditional or just a traditional aspect of traveling of week to week in a place. Then it becomes very tiring carrying so much stuff with me. Whereas this, if I'm living like a semi-expat, well, carrying 45 kilograms isn't that unusual because I'm going to be here for weeks. It's easy to plan that, and then once I'm settled in here, then it's perfectly fine. But in terms of the other obstacles, I personally think they're just unique to people. I think they're unique to person. For me, I know, so when I was in high school, from the age of like 11 years old, you have, the school reports, like the teachers give you a report at the end of the year. And a summary of me, that most of the teachers all used to say, but there was one in particular, said, Nitesh has a tendency to distract others, and he has a tendency to be distracted by others. And that describes me all over. I'm an all or nothing type person, of where I can easily go 6 months to a year by myself in a house, working, no human contact, and just watching Netflix and working all the time, 15 hours a day. I can easily do that, and I'm comfortable doing that. But then I can do the opposite of socializing for 15 hours, drinking for 15 hours. I'm an all or nothing type person. And I don't know if that's like an addiction trait of some sort, but I'm all or nothing in life. And then it becomes hard when you're exposed to the whole hostel culture and like social, and then the whole hostel culture is just one aspect. Then you've got digital nomad meetups. You've got these separate meetups outside of the hostel, of where you could be socializing with people maybe similar age, entrepreneurial. And so then it's knowing when to say no. And then it becomes like, you drink too much the night before, well, then it seeps into your whole habits of where you don't wake up on time. You can't read books on stoicism in the morning. It's just the whole routine that I would have had in the UK is completely off. And I think that's where it's getting the balance somehow. And me and my cousin was speaking about it last night. I was saying, well, actually, for me, I'm extreme in the sense of, if I put a limit in my brain and in my mind, then I'll follow it. But because I didn't put any expectations on myself when I came here, as simple as is saying, well, every night, don't drink more than 4 drinks. Perfect. If I had said that, I would have stuck to that. But because I didn't define that limit, it was like the world is your oyster. You could do as you please every day. I didn't put in my mind how many hours of work I should be doing every day. And some days I've worked very hard. Like I've worked for 10 hours more and done like like yesterday, I finished at 2-3 o'clock because I was in a rhythm of work. I felt comfortable doing it and it felt nice. And I think, but it's a learned experience. I think you just kind of and sometimes you just want to enjoy the moment. Like if you can't do this for like 6 months to a year, but if you think to yourself, be irresponsible maybe for 1 month, couple of weeks, enjoy it, and then get back to that stability, that normality, and that kind of routine. And hopefully at that point, then I can do it.
Yeah. Can we rewind a little bit back into the podcast? And you mentioned a website, a Nomad something website?
Nomad List, nomadlist.com.
So what is the Nomad List? Is it places where, like you were saying, hotspots where nomads seem to go? That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. The best one to probably describe more than Lisbon, because Lisbon is hard to imagine it being like a nomad hotspot, because it feels more like a London, Sydney. It feels just like a traditional city. But the best, probably most traditional nomad city or place in the world is Bali. Bali Canggu is probably the easiest to understand, of where there's just a whole community of these people who are working online, doing any number of things, and they've just built up their whole community in close to the beach, and so but again, it was unusual, but it's always between Bali and Lisbon. Canggu and Lisbon always like change between each other. They're either number 1 or number 2, and then I think there's like Bangkok and a few other places in the world. That.
Cal, you've done a retreat in Bali. What was that different to obviously traveling there and not having that sense of community that obviously Pixie probably would experience with a nomad?
So running a retreat or attending?
Yeah,
running a retreat. Well, it's all organised truly for you. Bali is very well set up for that. So most places now will have things set up ready for it, and in fact for some of them that's their entire business. So the retreat was organised beforehand. I was asked to I didn't have to organise anything. I just had to turn up and lead certain aspects of it, and so Tulsa, it was really easy. But in terms of even trying to run your own or set up your own, you would really just have to contact any number of places over there, and they would have someone very specifically trained to help you set it up. Whatever you want, they can do
So
it.
it's not that sense of community that you can actually go there and meet like-minded people. I think that nomad experience is so unique in that sense that you wouldn't really get that with anything else, right? Like even with strength and conditioning, when you go to a new country, you have to kind of look them up or network and be a little bit more proactive. Whereas it's literally you walk through the doors in a hostel and you could meet anyone. You could meet your potential like partner, or
You could.
circumstances of like so much more open there.
Well, I would say
What you tend
in
to,
Bali,
yeah,
in Canggu, you could, but not everywhere else. Canggu, definitely. It's just
yeah. Canggu seems to be that it's really like it's got a real reputation of this digital nomad world of where the community, and I think so with the distinguishing line between the whole hostels and digital nomad world, sometimes there's an overlap, and there often is. So example, in this hostel, there's quite a few long stay people who have also been doing similar to me. If they taken their laptop and they just brought their work here with them. So those are like traditional digital nomads who are also traveling. But I would say in hostels, like maybe 80% of them are people who are going surfing. Like it's a stopover place of where they come here for a couple of days. I'll give you a little funny story. So a couple of, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, there was, and this has happened quite a few times of different people, but two girls from France just stopped at the hostel. They were sailors on a boat. Okay, so like a catamaran, not a big one, but a boat where they kind of basically sail around the world with rich people, and the rich people just hire out a private boat. And but one of the parts on their boat had just gone faulty. It just like collapsed or whatever. So they had to stop in Lisbon for a couple of days, get a replacement part, and so they decided to just stay in the hostel for a couple of days. Now, you get into a conversation with them, French female sailors, like that, just all three of those things, you're just not going to, like, to get that perfect combination, those three things coming together, well, the conversations are going to flow. There's a curiosity of like what led you to choose that profession, why are you doing it, how long do you want to do it, like it's just any number of questions, and they were amazing people and super interesting. But that's where I think the hostel world, you can get some digital nomads, quite a lot, but there's a lot of people who are doing more of the traditional traveling, whereas the digital nomad world that you get from apps like meetups, of where they go into these events or conferences or like sit down meals, those are very much complete digital nomads, of where they're maybe software engineers or people who work online. So the worlds do overlap between the two, but I think they can be quite separate. And a place like London is a really good example, and anywhere, Sydney. The digital nomad world is in front of us, but we just don't want to dip into it because we don't have an incentive to do it. Like in our own cities, we've got local friends, local families. Going on a meetup app to meet random people in your own home city, it would be like a weird thing to do. But if you move to a new city, well, that's just the thing you do. And I think that's where the worlds are quite separate. Although you could, like in places like Sydney or anywhere in Australia, I imagine there's going to be a nomad world of some sort, especially in places probably like Australia, because you've got the beach, you've got the sand, you've got the weather, that it must attract those people.
Oh, definitely, I imagine. I went to the Northern Territory last year and there was a smaller, but definitely a community there that were just traveling and working, and, you can pretty well get Wi-Fi anywhere.
Yeah.
And you'd see them out with their computers. So that's when you know they're digital nomad, I guess, because we're out there relaxing, like actually on a holiday or trying to have a holiday, and they've got their computer or their laptop out and they're writing a book or writing an article or something. So it was a smaller, but definitely in Australia, and I'm sure like Bali is huge, right?
It's for that,
so
yeah.
Bali's chockers full of Australians.
Yes.
Is it a big English destination? I know you went there last year, Tols, but like Australians would go there every year.
Yeah.
But
I met
big
a lot of
English
Australians
population.
but then I also met some British people, and I don't know, for me, I was like, I'm just here to do my own thing. So I met a couple of girls who are from all over, like some from Singapore and Australia and things like that. But when I met British people, I was like, stop asking me what I do. Like, I'm even though I love my job and I love what I do, like, I was at that moment where I'm like, I'm here to kind of unpeel some of the layers and find out my true purpose and my some of my deeper questions that I had. And when somebody kept prodding me about what I do, and usually it's okay, so can you help me with this? Because can I just ask you a question? And I'm like, I really don't want to. So I think I was more closed off. So I've been to hostels where I haven't had the same experience as Pixie, especially when I was traveling around Australia. But there was a lot of people who were literally out there for a piss up, because, am I allowed to say that?
You are in Australia.
But, but then I was just like, well, I was able to meet new people, but I didn't have the experience that he had, because I think it was more of an open invitation with Pix, whereas with me, it was almost like, I'm a bit weary, like I was a little bit closed off, and had my barriers up, I guess. And whereas now I probably have a totally different experience. But yeah, I think it's the experience that you make of it, right?
Yes. Although I don't think Australian hostels are like Lisbon hostels. Not from what I'm hearing. They're not.
I don't think they're like, so well, another funny like mini story on this. There was a girl called Charlotte she's from Australia, met her in Krakow last year in January. So she was one of the like first, if you want to call it sounds so clinical, but batches of people we met. But she said, you guys don't know how lucky you are to live in Europe, because you've got the best hostels in the world. And that's a fact, I imagine, because here the model is done so well that they know that the hostels are really, really well kept. You've got hostel chains like Hostel One, which have got hostels all over Europe, and there's a consistency to them. Staffing are very friendly, clean. And then they're organized in terms of like drinking in the night or games in the night. And they just got a whole, like a community kind of built up around it. Whereas from how I've spoken to people, they said like America, Australia, it's just not structured in that way, where they've got hostels, but there's no like community or culture there. It's just somewhere, basically like a motel where you're staying. But there isn't like the whole organization and this, like in the hostels here, the ones which I've been to, I would say in all of them, you feel like it's your home. You feel like it's really a frat house with just a bunch of people who you wake up in the morning and you're like, hey, like you were drunk the night before, you're eating breakfast together. You just feel like you're in a big community frat house.
Yeah.
That's actually really special. Maybe we should do that, Cal. Just go to Europe and...
Well, definitely in Europe, not in Australia, because it's like backpackers is what we call it here. I mean, it might be called a backpackers hostel, but definitely it's like where the rats live, and it's not.
And I think that's probably why my experience was different. So,
for sure,
definitely, I normally deal with the accommodation whenever me and my brother or my cousin go traveling. So I'm normally the person who organizes everything, surprise, surprise. We're going to do this. We're going to see that. But maybe I'll look into more hostels this time, because we're due to go to Austria next year. And I know a couple of people, a special friend lives there. So hopefully she can show us around. But it will just be a different experience. I think that definitely, especially what you're saying, it just sounds so enticing, Pix. So I think
I've got so many places I can recommend. And I think it's just going in with a defined purpose of why you're doing it. And I'm not saying that because sometimes it happens accidentally. Like, again, the Krakow, it was more, well, give it a try. My cousin's been talking about it for years. Why not? I didn't go in with the intention of I want to network or I want to meet new people. It was just very much an unknown. As soon as I did that, then as soon as the January happened and I went to Krakow, did that for like 5-6 days or something, kind of just changed my perspective. I decided as soon as I came back that I was going to do a solo trip by myself, which was Madrid and then Rome. And that was over like a 3-week period. So quite close to home, not too far away, but I decided at that point, I want to meet more people. I just kind of, And it's not meeting people in the sense of just ticking boxes of like just a numbers game. It was like, I want new human experiences now, whether it's 5 minutes with someone or whether it's potentially 5 days with someone. I want to meet like-minded people in the world of where we're kind of on a similar wavelength or like perspectives in life, or completely different perspectives, which I can maybe learn from and admire and use in my life in some ways. And so I think for me, that was the game changer. And from last year, it's just been really an extension of that now. And Lisbon is just that. Fundamentally, it's not any different than how I experienced Krakow in January. It's just now, it is slightly different, I suppose, in this perspective of where last year, when I was going to the hostels, I wasn't working because they were short trips. They were like 5 days.
The holidays.
Or even the 3-week one. I think I had the intention of working for an hour or two a day. I didn't even do that. But it was, I kind of, in my mind, I decided they're holidays. Like, they are holidays, although they're in a hostel, it's a holiday trip. This one, very different. And this is why I've learned a lot about myself and kind of this whole life of where, when you're here for 6 weeks and you go in with the intention of being like a digital nomad, then that means you have to then work and then you've got to define, like, again, hours, what your limits are. And so I think this experience is definitely very unique compared to last year's experiences.
Pix, we can speak for like hours, can't we? But let's
round so quickly already.
Well, let's round up with, everybody knows me, knows I'm a planner, so they know that I like some. Oh, Kelly's like, yeah, definitely. But for me, I would have in mind certain destinations that I would like to go, and I know you had like Serbia, you had Canada, you've got Thailand and Bali in your head, but what's next? Like, obviously there are going to be limitations with which countries will need you to quarantine and which borders are actually open, but what's the next, few destinations that you've got in your mind? And tell us what the next step is for you.
So the next step, I think, and another person who kind of said this in my mind. So I went to a Digital Nomad meetup last week in like a restaurant, nice rooftop kind of bar, and there was a guy from Amsterdam there. He was on our table. There was like a French girl, a few other people, but his girlfriend was on another table. So they basically said they sold up everything in Amsterdam. They've got like a camper caravan now with their dog, and they're traveling like to different places in the world. But the one concept I liked, which kind of hopefully answers your question, is that he said that they wanted 3 places in the world where they can call home, of where there's like a base. So Amsterdam was their like base, that they were born there, and they kind of got their family and friends there. But he said, coincidentally, Bali was his girlfriend's favorite place. Lisbon has ended up being his favorite place, and they're looking for a 3rd place, like in the sense of where they've maybe lived in each of those places for 6 months to a year, but they can actually feel like you're at home there. And I think like that kind of brought it home for me in a different way of where, well, maybe I could do something quite similar of where, like Lisbon now, I can imagine myself being here, not living here permanently, but I can definitely imagine myself possibly living here for 1 or 2 years. I could definitely imagine that. And then also wanting to try out the whole Thailand, Bali kind of culture, and then maybe Canada. And that, I think if there was a roadmap for the future over the next like 5 to 10 years, it's maybe getting more out of Lisbon, because I kind of see how unique the city is compared to other cities. And then maybe, doing the Southeast Asia, and then doing like the North America, and kind of seeing how I kind of go with those 3 places, but with a view to eventually settling in one place. And I think that could be Canada, but who knows? It could be Bali, it could be Thailand, it could be anywhere in the world. Anywhere other than the UK right now in my mind. It's basically the
Probably
summary.
a good shout.
It's but who knows? Things can change. Like I'm not in a relationship right now. I've got no commitments, and so it's easy for me to say at this point that the world is my oyster and I can do as I please, which I can. But things can change quite quickly, and expectations. So it's right now, I would say for the year ahead, just more of the same. Just keep traveling, maybe for a couple of months in a location, maybe stay in Lisbon for a little bit longer, but with a view of hopefully moving to Canada in 2022. Like that's more the still the ultimate goal, is get a few months in these different destinations, but hopefully have a view to moving to somewhere like Canada, like Toronto or Vancouver, for a longer duration. Yeah, hopefully Bali, Australia, who knows? It could be like that's the amazing thing about, I think, hopefully with these vaccines rolling out, and like we'll see how the world ends up next year. But I think I think if I was going to summarize my whole thing as well, I think like COVID has opened up, it's destroyed a lot of people's lives, like livelihoods, business, etc. But I think it's opened up a world of possibilities for the people who wanted to seize the moment, of kind of new opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise have got. And hopefully 2021 is kind of just opens up the world again. And maybe it's given people time to reflect, to think, well, actually, is this career path correct for me, or should I do something different? And maybe that's the good side of COVID, kind of taking the positives out of it. And hopefully next year, it's the same for all of us.
But very, very quickly before we do say goodbye, I just want to ask, because I find this a lot with, I am a strength and conditioning coach and work in sport and work with people with rehabilitation, but I actually find the people who are more willing to help me or collaborate with come from outside my industry or outside of my expertise, and they want me to collaborate with them. So is that what you're finding on your journeys, that if people ask you what you do, that if they're not in the same industry, there's a little bit more intent for them to help you, or ability for them to help you, or whereas other people might see you as a bit more of a competitor and not offer work or help?
Yeah, great question. I think from my perspective, and I'm kind of closed to the possibility that I want help from anyone else, in the sense that, and I think it's unique to my profession, is that because it's politics. Firstly, very few people have experience with like deeper level, higher senior politicians or any of that. Like the whole world is completely unknown. And when it comes to like the freelancing aspect, like web design, etc., I use a lot of like freelancers in India. I've got a whole kind of network of them. So here, who knows, maybe in 2 months' time, I might kind of want like a team of people to work around me here. But I'm quite close to that in a kind of maybe unexpected way, of where if someone says they're a web designer or they're a graphics designer, I want to know who they are as a human being. I don't really care what they do.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
kind of like the networking side for things for me. I'm not open to really. It could be an exception. Someone really unique could come along, and I think to myself, well, do you know what? I need them on board, or they can add something to my business. But right now, as it stands, I think I'm going to definitely going back to what we were saying, like the social aspects more than the kind of professional aspects here.
Well, you don't know what doors of opportunities will be open up to you. I think it's just
absolutely
taking it as it comes, right? And seeing what opportunities come within the unknown, which is exciting.
Yeah, no, that's just been my recent experience, Nitel, that people I'm starting to step a little bit out of strength and conditioning, but using my abilities and expertise as a coach, which some of those skills do really transfer to other industries. And these other industries are asking me to give input on things that I don't have expertise in, I don't have experience in, I certainly don't have qualifications in, but they're asking for input. And I just thought the position you're in would actually make it very easy for people to go, oh, I want to know I want a piece of what he's got. I want a piece of his knowledge and place it in a little bit of what I'm doing.
Yeah, like I think when it comes to the work aspect of things, of where, and some people might be open to it, of where they meet some new person and they think, well, do you know what, let's collaborate together, let's work together. And that works for some people. For me, I think it's a combination of, again, my work is so super specialist that me seeing someone fitting into the business model in my business and my specialism is just very rare. And two, even if they did, which sounds horrible when I say it, but I'd still rather use an anonymous person online in India because I've got a network out there, and or like people like services like Upwork, where you can get freelancers from around the world. I'd rather use them and make a friendship here instead. Because I think when you start, it's like business and family. Like you generally shouldn't be mixing the two. Like I have a pretty solid rule with exceptions. I don't take on family clients. Like I do not want clients who are family members. And even if it's an easy task, I'd rather say no to it, because there's just a conflict there between like friendships, family, and then business. And I think the same with this whole nomad world, of where if I want to make a friendship with someone, then I'd rather it just be a friendship and then no business. Business is off the table completely. And there might be like exchange of ideas through conversations and learning from each other, but not strict in the sense of let's collaborate on a project together, or let me hire you or you hire me. Like I think I've kind of, for me personally right now, and again, things could change, but the way I am, I kind of want to, I don't want to mix those two worlds together, of where I'm maybe unique in the sense of I'm seeing the digital nomad world as a social aspect rather than a networking business aspect. Like one example, I don't know if you guys know about this, it got recommended. They got something called Nomad Cruise. So it's a cruise ship where digital nomads sail around the world for like 12, 13 days. And so there's like 200-300 nomads, and you have like conferences inside of there.
Oh my God, I want to go.
Yeah, it's like,
I could do a cruise. I love cruises.
yeah, it's like speaking arrangements and everything. But when you know you're not a true digital nomad, is where I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't want to go to any workshops. Like I have no use in going to the workshops. I have no use in the inspirational talks on how to do bookkeeping and accounts, and forget that. I don't need that. But I want to go to drink by a pool or on a cruise ship. Like
That's me at the conferences.
Yes, conferences.
I don't want to go to the presentations.
Yeah, what's the point? Like, but who knows? Like, the strange thing is, and maybe that's my own, like, I wouldn't say arrogance necessarily, because I'm open to it, but I think maybe I should be doing that more. And I think if I stayed in Lisbon, from what they told me, is that there's a lot of these marketing conferences and there's always like talks going on. And actually, maybe I should go to them, because my knowledge is being mainly practical in the sense of kind of learning online and then reading through books. Well, I think I would be open to going to conferences if I think they're interesting speakers, or where I think they're like distinguished or experienced speakers. Then maybe I would be open to that, as well as going on a nomad cruise and drinking. It's
First thing I think about a cruise, because I started cruising when my parents took us on holiday when we were younger, and I'm like, it's just food all the time, and then you stop off on a new destination and then you hop back on again, and yeah, you've got the pool there, and it was so exciting. And then the second time we did it, it was for my dad's 60th, and there was like 15 of us. It was such a well-oiled machine, obviously. Organized it, but we got everybody together, and it was just so much fun. But I relied on the gym a lot more then, because I'm like, look, if I'm gonna go all out on the buffet, I still want to make sure that I look good in the bikini. So it's just like it was my compromise. So when I hear cruise, it's like it actually came to thought, actually, when earlier in the conversation, is just saying, you're just creating that community. And cruises are different, right? They are like, they'll do single cruises or elderly cruises or family cruises, or, singles only, or whatever it is. If you can actually have a nomad version. And when you actually said it now, I'm like, yeah, I was thinking that would be a great idea, but it's already being done,
There's a movie, I don't know if you guys have seen it. Have you seen Before Sunrise by Richard Linklater?
No.
Okay, so it's a trilogy. There's Before Sunrise, Before Sunset. It's a great classic movies, and he did a movie like Boyhood, and he's a great director. But Before Sunrise is with Ethan Hawke and a French actress, and the concept is basically they meet on a train in France, in Paris, and then they spend like 8 hours together. It's just a movie. It feels like one take, where they spend a day together, just from a train journey, and then they explore the city together. And then there's like the trilogy is like it flourishes into like a marriage and divorce and all sorts of stuff. But it starts from that one moment in that first film of like an intense experience of where you connect with a human being. And I think traveling, for me, I think I want to take the intense aspects into it, of where I can meet someone for 5 minutes or explore like a city with them for a couple of days, but it feels like truly intense and real. Like it feels like you've kind of condensed, as opposed to learning about someone over 10 years, you kind of condense it down into potentially 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or maybe a couple of days, or maybe a couple of weeks. But it's a lot more kind of intense, and I kind of like those real experiences. Whereas I think people in the UK or in Australia could be just as interesting over like coffee in a coffee shop in our home cities, but they're just not as open to that possibility of where they might meet someone who I don't know, they look at across the other side of the coffee shop, but they don't ever think, well, actually, should I get up and talk to them and ask them how they are, where they're from? Whereas when you're in a foreign city, it'd be rude not to, and it'd feel weird not to just be open and open to that possibility. And I think for me, Before Sunrise is a good example of that kind of like thirst for learning about people, learning about new cultures, and just feeling like fresh and revitalized for that.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was reading a lot about how when we stay curious and we learn something new, we are given a dopamine hit. So we've got the hormones surging through our body, thinking that, you know, it's like when you're having going into a new relationship, that you think, well, this is really exciting and I get to learn about this. And the more information you get, the more curious you are, the more your hormones are triggered in that area. But what you're doing in this element is you're staying curious and you're getting that dopamine hit, and then you're just following on from that. And that's where I think that people then end up, you know, learning new skills or venturing into new countries, because for them there is no barrier for it, and they're just constantly staying curious and engaging in that sense of reward. It's instantaneous reward, really, which makes people want to continue doing it, right?
Well, but this is where I don't know if it's a dangerous side of things, and another movie, Into the Wild, of where it could be like, is this just a dopamine hit that you can become lost in this whole world, of where you can't go back to like a traditional life anymore, of where you're constantly used to meeting new people, exciting surroundings, new cultures? That is it possible to stop them, or do you just keep moving and keep going from place to place? And I think that's a question I don't know at this point yet. But I think people overcomplicate life as well. I think my answer is probably, if you wake up happy in the morning and you go to sleep happy in the evening, you're doing something right. Like, and so the details can be worked out in the middle. It's the beginning and the end that kind of count. And so, yes, I suppose there has to be a long-term perspective of where am I going, where am I heading? But I also think if you're happy in the moment right now, and it's like a healthy life overall, and I think some people kind of think to themselves, well, you know, you can't keep traveling because that's not what society does. And, you know, people should settle down, you should have children. And that's not to say I don't want any of those things. I do, but it's just not knowing when. It's being open to it, but until that kind of happens, why not just enjoy myself, exploring the world, meeting new people, and
do it while you can. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Kelly's saying it from experience.
Absolutely, I am. Yeah. Once you do have children of a certain age, you are committed to a school, unless they're homeschooled, and then that's an entirely different commitment. I think I'd personally rather stay in one spot and let someone else really take care of the schooling professionally. But also you might fall in love with someone who doesn't want to travel, or unless, you know, you've met them in Lisbon and they're nomading. But, you know, do it while you can.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's only one life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's right. And the older you get, like, I don't know if at my age I would expect to see someone else my age in a hostel. But then you're there, Nitesh. Are you one of the older residents there, or no? There you go.
No, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think it also depends on the hostel to hostels, because it very much like hotels, of where you've got some hostels that are known as the party hostels. Well, you know, in those places they're going to be in their 20s, probably like low 20s. There are some hostels which are like the hybrid ones, which here, COVID is an exception, because I think in normal times this hostel could be full of young people just partying, etc. But because of COVID, there are more long stay people. There are a lot of like volunteers, so it feels like you're like amongst like local people and people who are kind of slowing in their pace of life. But in terms of like age, I would say I'm oldish in terms of like the ones who I've met, but I've met plenty here who are in their like early 30s, so early 30s, mid 30s, so very similar age.
Yeah.
But I think it does depend on hostel to hostel. But what I have found, which has impressed me the most, not necessarily this experience only, since last year, is that people in their 20s and people in their 30s or people in their 40s, some of the people in their 20s, they've been traveling from such a young age and they've got such a maturity to them that people wouldn't have maybe built that up until maybe their 30s or something, where they maybe started traveling from the age of 18 and now they're 23. You couldn't tell, like the level of kind of maturity and how they're able to adapt to different groups and their confidence.
Yeah.
You would think they're possibly in their 30s if they didn't look it. And so, yeah, I think the age, I can't see me wanting to do this when I'm 50, but I haven't worked out the details from now until 50. So I've got a bit of time, maybe not even 50, probably. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like I'm just taking it year by year.
Yeah.
But going back to it, I think it is like like with a view to moving somewhere eventually, like Canada, and actually having a base, and then maybe dipping in and out of this culture, maybe once a year. Like maybe once a year for 2-3 weeks or something, and then go back into the local lifestyle. I definitely don't see me doing this long term, of where I'm kind of going like place to place every couple of months. Like I do like the thought of stability, and I think I'll kind of in the long term, once I've kind of over the next 2-3 years, is I'll maybe dip in and out of it once or twice in the year. Go to a few hostels occasionally, get my dopamine hit of like human contact, and then go back to the stability again. Go back to kind of nice, calm. Like I haven't seen a TV show since I've left. Like, and I'm used to watching, like binge watching TV shows, Netflix, Prime. I haven't watched a movie since I've left. So the little things which I also miss. It's
yeah. So season 4 of The Crown, not seen it.
No,
I haven't seen it.
One.
No.
You haven't seen season 1?
No, I'm doing. I'm
Are you doing season 1?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I did see The Undoing. Do you know the Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant? I think it's called Undoing.
I have heard all about it.
Really good. Very, very good. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah. So I have watched that. But when I return home, I'm going to watch so much. Yeah.
My most hit was The Queen's Gambit, and loads of
I love that.
Oh,
yeah, love that.
Everyone's loving that.
Great.
But what about something a little bit, I don't know, I just loved it, Schitt's Creek.
I haven't.
See, my cousin loves Schitt's Creek. She's just highly recommended it. She said it's so funny.
It's such a beautiful, it's funny, but so beautifully written by Canadians. And, but it's such a story of love and acceptance.
Is it? Okay.
Oh my God, it's so heartwarming. Beautiful, but great characters.
Love it.
That seems like the Christmas thing to watch then. I might do that as soon as I'm back. And I just watch. I think, it's, that's where you can appreciate kind of like the exciting, moving constantly aspects of life, and then the simplicity of watching a nice movie or TV show.
Binge watch, yeah.
A binge watching. And I think it's like, that's where I think the nice surprises are, is not kind of gaining validation or happiness from one aspect. It's kind of gaining it from different aspects of life and just appreciating it overall.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks.
My absolute pleasure as always. Thank you guys.
And being here, and it's been
interacting with us, and your like this is your work zone time.
Yes, true.
On it, I would have been asleep still. I wouldn't have woken up. It's so you guys have inspired me to wake up now, do work for the rest of the day, have some breakfast or something. It's this is where. So basically, it means I need to do a podcast every day just to get up now. That would be my incentive, and But no, thank you for inviting me as always.
Brilliant, loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pixie. All right, have a great day.
All the best.